So, welcome everybody to our seminar. This is the first seminar in a long series of webinars that we are organizing on Horizon Europe. And by we, I mean the whole NCP team, National Contact Point team from Luxinnovation. Luxinnovation, as you probably know, is the national contact point for Horizon Europe and Horizon 2020 in the past. So Horizon Europe is the new framework program of the European Commission, financing research, development, and innovation projects. It hasn't officially been launched yet, but it will come in the coming months. So the first calls will appear very soon. So that's why we decided to make this series and help you prepare. I'm doing this seminar today with my colleague Stefano from also from Luxinnovation, who will cover more the EIC part. I will cover more the introduction and the Marie Curie part, so we'll get into these topics. So why did we decide to call this easy funding opportunities for companies? So that's the subject of today's webinar. By easy, we don't mean that it's very easy to get them and that it's no competition and no work required at all. But we rather mean that it's these are good, straightforward opportunities for companies, not only companies for Marie Curie's, but also they are offering a very, let's say, straightforward way into Horizon programs in case you haven't participated in the past, although there are also very good opportunities if you already know the program. A common theme of these opportunities is that they are generally open-themed, meaning they are open to all topics that you are interested in, and you're not responding to a call on a specific topic or subject. Another point about these calls is that they don't require the formation of any consortia, meaning that it's you as the company who can respond to these calls. Okay, so let's dive in. Just a few words of introduction. Luxinnovation is the National Innovation Agency. We are a public-private partnership. Mostly governed by the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Crafts, and the Business Industry Federation of Luxembourg, FEDIL. We offer different services to companies. I think the company participants of this webinar will certainly know one or the other parts that are oriented to various aspects of business innovation, ranging really from startup creation and attraction to the support and digitalization of SMEs, but also the support of more innovation-based RDI projects that are financed by the Ministry of Economy. So what is our objective as national contact point? We can break it down into three factors that are tied to each other. Our objective is really to increase the participation in Horizon Europe for any organization that's based in Luxembourg. At the same time, we want to help you increase your success rates and make it easier for you to apply, help you along the process. And at the same time, since we are an innovation agency and in contact with many different actors both from public and private, wherever we see the opportunity, we are happy to establish new collaborations and help people really find each other to do innovative projects. How do we do these things? How do we achieve these missions? We try to be very personalized in our support. So meaning we want to really talk to you. Well, nowadays this is done mostly remotely, but talk to you and understand what your needs are, what your interests are, and identify the best measures inside the Horizon programs for your particular case. We offer webinars on a regular basis, as you just realized, of course. For those of you who are going to ask, yes, these recordings will be available afterwards. We offer also trainings on different subjects throughout the year, maybe on grant writing or particular grants, for example. We help with consortium building, so some of the calls, not the ones we focus on today, but some of them require the formation of consortia, so partners from different countries in Europe coming together to respond to a call. We help you finding partners. Then we guide you with the proposal writing. Of course, we cannot do any proposal writing ourselves for you, but we read, we review your proposals. As soon as you have a finished text, we can comment on it. Generally, we don't cover the, let's say, your area of expertise and scientific or innovative knowledge, but rather we try to bring it in the right form, see if it responds to all the criteria, if they're in the right place, if it's clear, the ideas that you're trying to make, etc. Then we also deal with legal and financial questions of Horizon projects. This is often for ongoing projects, if you have to do reporting, etc. But it can also be, for example, for budgeting in the preparation of these calls. At the same time, and somewhat separately from the national contact point function, we also sit in the representation of Luxembourg in the creation of the new programs. So meaning this is a place where all the member states sit together with the European Commission to design and fine-tune the upcoming calls in different thematics. The advantage, why I mentioned this, is that it's as soon as you realize programs that are not fulfilling the criteria that you want to, or the priorities that you have, please bring these concerns to us and we can discuss it, and maybe we can bring it up with the Commission to change these things in the future. So Horizon Europe in a nutshell, this is not going to be a long dive into the different programs in Horizon Europe. We already had a launch event on that, and you can find the recordings also online. Just giving you a very brief overview, Horizon Europe is the main funding instrument of the European Commission. It will run for the next 7 years. It will both cover specific areas, challenges which are represented in nowadays they're called clusters, for example, in health or agriculture, etc. And at the same time, there's also more open thematic calls like the ones that we will cover today. And one thing that I want to stress is that the Commission really wants the participants in these calls to be very diverse, especially the ones that the calls that are being represented by consortia, meaning it's not only academia, it's not only the big universities that you know, but it's companies, it's startups, it's large industry, patients and citizens, and everybody should really be somewhat represented, because the goal in the end is to bring solutions to the market. And you can only do that realistically if the right people co-develop these solutions with you. That's the spirit. This is a bit the organization of Horizon Europe. We don't have to go into all these points. I'd much rather show you this. You can think of the 3 pillars. I've sort of so pillar 1 is the excellence area. There we will cover today the Marie Curie program. This is bottom up, can be any area. It's generally more the low TRL levels and generally no consortia, although there are specific schemes that do require them. Pillar 2 is, as I said, the thematic calls on different topics, and we won't go into those today, but there will be other webinars, and if you have any questions, please get in contact. Then there's pillar 3, which is the other focus of today with the EIC, the European Innovation Council grants. Also bottom up, any areas rather higher TRL levels accordingly. And again, you will hear more about those later. Some basics very quickly. We showed you this slide also in our launch event presentation for beginners. But just to recapitulate, there are different kinds of funding schemes. There are research and innovation actions, which are generally more lower TRL projects, which offer 100% of funding of the research activities, both for public and private. And there's the innovation actions, which are generally more closer to the real market, and that for companies have a 70% funding rate. Then there are coordination and support actions. These are more sort of networking type of consortia, somewhat similar to cost actions, if you are familiar with those. The idea is bringing people from all across Europe together, different stakeholders, to develop new guidelines, white papers, policy papers, etc. And they can be, even though they offer less funding, they can be very interesting to get into networks, collaborate, get to know the right people to then later on build real research projects. Then there's the EIC, which we'll get into details later. There's also the Marie Curie actions, which are somewhat specific and we'll also cover. A quick word about the TRL levels. Traditionally, so the Horizon Europe will cover the whole value chain. Traditionally, of course, universities and research centers are more in the lower TRL levels. And then you get into startups, and generally it's more the end user than the companies that go for the higher TRL levels. But then these are somewhat subjective, and it really depends on different calls and different programs where this can be addressed. So another important slide: why should you at all participate in Horizon Europe funding? The first reaction should not be to finance your research and get easy funding. That shouldn't be the prime objective, because generally there are, I would say, easier options, or at least different options to get funding. But it's really to showcase the excellence and give visibility to the products that you develop and the solutions that you create. To network with other actors. This networking can be very important to network with if you're a company, networking with the latest and best actors in academic research and technology development can be essential to really get the cutting edge technologies and expertise. Then, of course, the funding, yes, it is important. It is very interesting because the funding rates are generally 100%, plus you get a 25% overhead for the indirect costs. And then it can open new markets, etc. You can get in contact with different countries that you're in Europe and even beyond sometimes that you might not be familiar with traditionally. There are different degrees of participation, especially this first webinar is more targeted towards newcomers, maybe organizations that are less experienced. You don't have to jump into huge projects with and coordinate these projects with 20 different actors. That shouldn't be your prime or your first dive into Horizon Europe funding, I would say. Rather, we want you to focus either on solutions, on schemes that we present today, or even in the calls, there are options to find your place and according to your level of expertise. You don't have to do all the writing of the proposal. It can be a small addition in relation to whatever addition you do to the consortium, and it can be rather small, but essential to be involved. So very quickly about consortia, even though they are really not the topic of today, but there are coordinators, which are generally coordinating a project, a multi-actor project with a large consortium. There are work packages, and accordingly there are work package leaders, which do a bit more of the work. And then There are partners that just showcase or pilot one of their solutions or product lines or whatever. But you can also participate as a non-partner, for example, as a subcontractor to a project. You will not sign, in this case, the official grant agreement, but you will be part of the project and you will receive funding through the project. So that's why I say this networking element can be very interesting. How do you get started in this project? So the first thing, of course, is to develop or define your interests. What do you want to get out of? That's very important. And we always recommend to sort of write more or less detailed sort of a value proposition. So meaning, what can you bring to a table? What is it that makes you interesting to receive funding for a European project? Then, of course, you need a lot of preparation and reflection, and we are there to help. Of course, there are also consultants specialized in helping companies and also academia along. So there are different ways of getting started, but look for the right help at the right moment. Okay, so now we get into the first real subject of today, and this is the MSCA, or also called Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions Program. The names have changed, of the different subtopics have slightly changed in Horizon Europe. If you were familiar with the individual fellowships in Horizon 2020, they are now called postdoc fellowships. Why? Because in principle, they were postdoc fellowships before. And it makes it clearer who is the target of these fellowships. So this is also the main scheme that I will present within the Marie Curie programs. There are other ones, but I think this one is the one that's the most straightforward and interesting for companies, especially given the support that we offer. So these are fellowships that finance a postdoctoral researcher. Postdocs obviously are people that have already received their PhD. They're centered on the researcher mobility, meaning the researcher should come from a different country, even outside of Europe, to Luxembourg and do this project. Career development of this applicant is also important. That's why, in general, so traditionally, I should say, mostly this scheme is used by academia because, well, academia always looks for funding for postdocs and fellows. But this scheme is open for companies, and I would rather say that it's an excellent opportunity for companies to use this scheme, because for one, the career development of the fellows, if you do as a postdoc an intern or a fellowship in a company, that makes it already a very good argument for, why does this have an impact for your career? Because if you stay within academia for your whole life, it might be difficult to find opportunities on the real market, on the job market. But if you have experience, real life experience with a company, that's a big plus for these applicants. And also a good argument that you can make in this proposal. They're financed by the European Commission, also evaluated by external experts. This is not really the Commission that reads this and says yes or no. These are really experts from the field that evaluate it. They are competitive, as are all programs inside the Horizon program, but I think they are worth the investment, and we can get into what the investment is for you. They're bottom up, meaning that it's you who decides basically the topic. So there are two main different, let's say, variations of these postdoc fellowships. There are what are called the European fellowships, and there are the global fellowships. Generally, we don't speak so much about the global fellowships, especially for companies. They are generally not what you're looking for, but it can be in some cases, and in these cases, it's important to discuss. So the European fellowships, this is a 2-year, up to 2-year fellowship of a postdoc that does this fellowship in a European country. He or she can come from any nationality. And as I said, you have this mobility clause, meaning the people have to move to Luxembourg, or more specifically, they cannot have lived or worked in Luxembourg for the last 12 months in the last 12, for more than a year, I should say, in the last 12 months preceding the next call deadline. The next call deadline will be in September, probably September 15. The global fellowships, they're a bit different. They start with a 1 to 2 year fellowship in a third country. So third countries are non-European and non-associated countries. So associated countries are countries in the past like Switzerland, Norway, etc. Now on the horizon Europe, we don't know all the countries that will be associated to the program yet. But this is under negotiation, and we'll know more about this later. But third countries are countries traditionally like the US, Japan, Korea, Australia, where you send a person to maybe one of the leading labs and universities in the world for up to 2 years. Then they come back to your company and they share for a year, and they share the knowledge that they acquired abroad. That's sort of the general idea. If you have questions about this scheme in more detail, please, and any questions for that matter, please get in touch or write them in the chat box, and we can see if we can address them later, or later during the webinar, or later if you contact us. So who are these fellowships for? Traditionally, as I said, it's mostly universities and RTOs, so the academic sector. Traditionally, this is a postdoc that writes to a famous professor and says, I want to work in your lab. Do you have any funding? And the professor says, no, please bring your own funding. And then they turn to this fellowship. The problem with that is that, this is also somewhat particular to this scheme, is that you need this applicant already when you write the application. It's not that you as a company write the application, you get the money, and then you find somebody for that position. No, it's you together with the applicant that does the application. And this can be tricky because this famous or this highly talented postdoc coming from a famous lab or research group might not have heard of Luxembourg and might not have heard of our universities or our companies, or especially startups and smaller companies. So can we address this this problem, and how can we help you with this? So I will get to answering that question in a second. So what is in it for you as a company or any type of organization willing to host these postdocs? As I said, it's a 2-year fellowship. It covers 100% of the costs, meaning the salary of the postdoc, research costs, and then training costs, traveling to conferences if that is allowed again, etc. All these things are included in this money that you receive from the commission. You don't have to write a detailed budget. You will receive a fixed amount that's multiplied by the amount of months that this postdoc fellow will stay at your organization. Then you also receive an overhead, and I'll get more to the budget later on. The big advantage really is that you can get scientists that have an expertise in any domain that you really require from around the world. Let them come to your organization and learn from them, while at the same time helping them advance their own career. So there's no obligation to hire these people, obviously, after the fellowship. But more often than not, we hear from companies that find really talented people this way and that want to keep them, obviously, as well. There are also good opportunities to do public-private collaboration. So within your fellowship, if you're a company, there's no obligation to involve academia, but very often it can be a good idea to do so. For example, to partnering up with an academia or an RTO in Luxembourg or in Europe, doesn't matter. And for example, for training or for particular purposes, that collaborations really that feed into this one project that you are supposed to develop within this fellowship. And of course, having these fellows will bring a lot of visibility to your organization. Very often the European Commission, especially for companies, is very keen on featuring them, interviewing them, and showcasing, look, there's this interesting startup or a small company in this country that has this very interesting project going on. So what kind of project can be financed? As I said, the career development of the fellow is very important, and the training, but this can be covered through partnering, as I said, with collaborators. Obviously, the postdoc needs to do a research and innovation project, and it can be something that's rather fundamental science, but it can be something that's very applied, developing a prototype or a new service and what have you. So there needs to be a scientific question behind the project. It cannot be simply, well, I want to hire somebody to do my sales team, for example. There needs to be a research question behind it that's not trivial, obviously, and that hasn't been answered at that level previously. And the outcomes should be valorized. Obviously, for a company, that's much easier generally than for an academia, where you maybe develop a patent or something like that. But that's about it. But with a company, generally, you have really the chance to push this closer to the market. The academic partners I mentioned, there is really, examples that can be anything, right? Engineering, really anything. There's no point in listing them. So what's expected from you as an organization? So we call you a host organization in this language. That's you will host this applicant for these 2 years. You, in principle, you need to find and select these applicants, and I will explain you how we will help you to do that. Then you should have an idea for your project, what you want to achieve. This can be very detailed, it can be very rough, you can leave a lot of liberty and independence to the fellow, or you can have a very detailed plan. That's really up to you, and depends how much time and how strict you are as well, how much time you want to invest. Then during the proposal writing phase, the proposal, it's a small proposal, 10-page proposal, will be written, I would say 90–95% by the applicant, but they need some basic information from you as well. For example, about your organization, about what kind of, how the applicant will be integrated in the team, that he will have a good time basically and learn from you and you from them. That's sort of the idea, and we can help you with that. And then if you have, of course, ideas already for collaborations, then that's very good to let your applicants know as well. If you have already a good applicant in mind, maybe you collaborate with a university already, or your contacts, doesn't matter. That's perfect. Please get in touch with us. We can help them. We can check their eligibility. Obviously, at the submission deadline, meaning again September, they have to have a PhD. There's this mobility clause that I mentioned. They need to move from a different country to Luxembourg, except if they, let's say, they only arrived last October, then it would be fine. Then there is this, so I should mention, I didn't do that yet, that this is sort of a disclaimer, because the whole Horizon Europe program has not been formally voted and adopted yet. There might be some small changes to specific clauses and numbers. We will keep you informed of those, but these will be, I would say, rather minor changes. It might be a deadline that changes for 2 weeks or something like that. One such element that is newly introduced now is the so-called scientific age of the applicants. Previously, nobody cared if this applicant had done his PhD in the 1950s or if he received a degree yesterday. This is changing, and we introduced this scientific age. This will probably be a limit of 8 years, so meaning that the candidate cannot have had their PhD for longer than 8 years. And then there are some exemptions, probably including parental leave and sickness or work maybe outside of science. This is not so well defined yet, but generally we are dealing with young candidates anyway, so this is not something you need to worry about. I'm just making a point because it's a novelty. What makes a good applicant? That's very important. Obviously, they should bring the expertise in the field that you need. They should complement the knowledge that you have, bring in something new. ideally they have a good publication record, but that's, if we now define what is a good publication record, this is becoming impossible. It depends also very much on where the applicant is coming from. If they come from the University of, I don't know, Cambridge, they might have a different publication record than if they come from, I don't know where, not to be politically incorrect. This is really judged in respect to the candidate and the potential of that candidate. So I wouldn't just disqualify an applicant that's, in your sense, brings something very good, but maybe it doesn't have his 5 nature and science publications. What's very important, though, is that they bring a certain level of independence, meaning that you, during the proposal writing, you don't have to answer 50 million questions every day. That's not what we want for you from this scheme. We want something where you are pretty hands-off. That's where you just have to give focal, feedback to the applicants, and obviously they need to bring in motivation. Some of the applicants they come with a good motivation in the beginning, and then they lose it over the course. So that's something that's very difficult to predict. Of course, now with the pandemic, the situation might be even more volatile. Very difficult to judge, but it's something that you can keep track of, and we are happy to help you with that as well. Generally, we recommend to exchange on a regular basis with the applicants during the proposal writing phase. That's basically the most important part. So how do we help you? That's, I think, the more interesting part of today. We have what we call the support initiative for this PF, Postdoc Fellowship Program. And I should stress, by you, we mean organizations based in Luxembourg. Obviously, if you come from a different country, you can check with your respective NCPs, national contact points, if they offer similar services. The whole scheme is, in principle, very easy. So the whole idea is that we want to help you find good applicants, and we want you to have to invest as little time and energy as possible. So the basic concept is that you send us what you expect your ideal candidate to be. And this should be several keywords. If I can also forward you the link and description to the exact initiative if you need it. The idea is give us 5 keywords. I don't know, let's say artificial intelligence in image recognition or something like that, that would help us identify global experts in that domain. And we will look at bibliometrics, publication records, etc. Contact these people, inform them, collect CVs, and then forward the CVs after we check the eligibility, forward the CVs to you. And then you will have to decide which ones are of interest. Maybe you want to conduct some interviews. That's pretty standard, and we'll leave this completely up to you. Although if you need help with that, please let us know. And then as soon as you decided on one or several candidates, there's no limit to the amount of proposals you can write. If you have several good applicants, that's always good. Of course, if you have several weak applicants, maybe it's not worth going that far. So then as soon as you selected them, we can start with the training. We do this remotely. We offer them support and help them with questions during the writing process, because generally this is the first larger application that they will write. So they might need a little bit more help, and that's where we jump in. This is giving you a bit of a timeline for this initiative. So we launched this campaign in November, so we send out emails. If you haven't received any, please let us know, and we can contact you personally. The idea being that you send us your expression of interest. With that, I mean really these keywords and maybe a project idea if you have one, although that's not the main priority. You send us this by the end of this month. I realize we are very close to the end of this month, so we might extend this deadline. Always please get in touch with us. We try to be very flexible and accommodate your needs. This is not a strong deadline. The strong deadline is in September, when the applicant needs to submit the proposal. But of course, the sooner we get into it, the better for you, because all the good people, the good applicants, they will look way in advance where are the good opportunities. So then we create profiles based on your description. As I said, we contact them, we send the CVs to you, you select them around June or so, and interview them, we train them. And traditionally, they do most of the proposal writing, the applicants, starting June, over the summer generally. That's where it gets very intense. And then the submission deadline for now, it's September 15th. It might change slightly, but probably not dramatically. And then you will know about the results in February the following year. This might seem very advanced for you, and obviously, especially companies always want to have talented experts the next day. But that's unfortunately not how it works. We need time to find good people, then they need time to write a good proposal, and then the commission needs time to do a fair evaluation of the proposals. And then the projects can start. I wrote June 2022, but it's probably already earlier, maybe March, April, I would say maybe April 2022, to give you an idea. This is giving you an idea about what kind of money you will receive. So this money will be paid to you as a host. Then you will pay them the costs and the salary of the applicant. I give you the numbers of Horizon 2020. In Horizon Europe, we'll have a slight increase. It will not be dramatic, maybe in the 5% increase, 10% increase maybe. So in the budget, this is a fixed budget, and this is before, you know, this is gross salary, this is before employers' costs and taxation, obviously. This is the amount that you will receive. So there's the living allowance that's meant for the salary. There's a mobility allowance. It's basically also an addition to the salary. That's not meant to cover, you know, if the applicant travels to a conference, but that's really meant all the costs that are inherent to moving to a new country. You know, you have to pay rent, etc. So this is, just consider this as being the salary. Same goes for the family allowance. This is if the applicant is married or has an equivalent status or has dependent children. Traditionally, it used to be the case that this status is only evaluated on the date of the submission. So meaning if the applicant, let's say, is married on the deadline, then he will be eligible, and this will not change throughout the course of the fellowship. I'm not sure what the status is under Horizon Europe. Maybe this has changed or not, but this is the way it used to be in the past. But that's generally also not an issue that you care about too much. Then there's the part that's covering research and training, traveling to conferences, secondments being, you know, collaborations with partners. Let's say you do a collaboration with academia, or it can be another company. The costs for this can be covered through it. And then there is a budget for management and indirect costs. So this is a money that will be given to you, and you can use it for whatever purpose you need, really. There are country correction coefficients, but I won't get into this because it's 100% anyways for Luxembourg, so it will not change. The salary can be topped up, so you can increase the salary of the applicant, for example, through these indirect costs part that you receive or through other means. There's no obligation to do so. Some applicants from some areas do this because they are very competitive domains to find good applicants, so they try to get the best people, and the best people can be very competitive, so they increase the salary. Some people do this, some people don't. That's really up to you. Yeah, that's that part. So this is what I told you about. This was all for these postdoc fellowships. There are other Marie Curie actions. I'm just presenting them very briefly in one slide. Please get in contact if you need more information on those. There's one for PhD students, meaning students that are on their way of doing their PhD, in their PhD, don't have their PhD yet. They used to be called ITNs, International or European Training Networks. They are now called doctoral networks. They are based, that's an exception, they are based on a consortium, so it will be you together with other companies, together with academia, and it will be several countries working together. And they will pay for up to 3 year PhD salary. This program is also very competitive. For a company, it can be interesting, I think, if you don't have to invest too much time into the writing of the proposal. So generally, as a company, you will be asked by an academic partner, or you can check with us, and maybe we can identify an academic partner that is in the course of writing such a proposal for you. Generally, what happens is that you will host a PhD student for part of their project, but the main part will be done at the academic partner. And this can be very interesting also, mostly for the networking part, because generally these doctoral networks are written on topics that are really cutting edge. So it might be something that's very interesting. You get access to interesting new developments, technologies, services that you wouldn't otherwise. So it can be good for the networking part, especially long term, of course. There's another scheme that's called Staff Exchange. It used to be RISE, Research and Innovation Staff Exchange. It's also consortium-based. This, as opposed to the other Marie Curie schemes, is for existing staff. And with existing staff, it can be anybody in your company or academia. It can be, researchers, but it can also be administrative staff. And you do an exchange with another partner organization, private or public, where the aim is to learn something new, a new practice of course, with the aim of being more innovative, more research-focused, acquiring new skills. But this is not to create new positions. This is for people that you already have employed. And again, if you're interested, get in touch. There are even more schemes, but I think they're not so relevant for you as a company. So that's it from my part. I now hand over to my colleague Stefano, who will speak about EIC, and I will look at your questions and try to answer them either at the end or in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles, and good morning, everyone. Yes, the second option that is, yes, quite simple for companies to apply, not because of the lack of competition, but because of the fact that they can apply to them alone, is the European Innovation Council Accelerator. Just a quick frame of what the European Innovation Council is. Basically, it's sitting into the Innovative Europe pillar of Horizon Europe, and it's meant to finance deep tech innovation. So the aim of the EIC is to identify and support breakthrough technologies and game-changing innovation with the potential to scale up internationally and become market leaders. The EIC supports all the stages of innovation. You can have very basic R&D, you can have validation and demonstration of breakthrough technologies, and then you can develop and scale up the startup or the SME with close to market research projects. You have already seen this the scale of TRL. What does the EIC cover? Basically everything. You have what's called the Pathfinder instrument for low TRL, a new transition at mid TRLs, and the accelerator for when you start validating your prototype or pilot system in market replication studies. Essentially, this is what most is covered. The Pathfinder is supporting indeed science towards technology breakthrough research. Normally, you have small collaborative projects. We will have up to 3 million euros and duration 3 to 4 years. The transition will be open just to people coming from the Pathfinder or the previous FET open and proactive projects in Horizon 2020, and it's meant to develop your technology further to TRL 6. But you will also have the possibility to have market feasibility studies and activities toward the establishment of joint ventures to exploit the innovation that you have achieved in a Pathfinder. And then the accelerator targets single SMEs and startups with ambitious plans for innovation-based scale-ups. A novelty will be that the EIC Accelerator will also be open to researchers spinning off for instance, from a research project, and they will have the possibility to incorporate the company during the project. The EIC is mostly bottom-up, so you can come up with whatever idea you like. But there will be some specific top-down calls with dedicated budget lines. You can see the list on the slide. For the accelerator, you will have two separated budget lines, one for, in addition to the bottom-up ones, one for strategic digital and health technologies, and one for the Green Deal. What's the policy behind the EIC Accelerator? And basically, you can see it from this image. You have a lot of Europe is great at creating innovation, but then when we have to translating this innovation into market opportunities, we tend to lag behind. And this is the map of unicorns. I don't remember from which year, but basically it's the map of unicorns worldwide. And Europe is really, really small at the is very, very low represented on this map at the center of the image. So the main reason for that is the lack of private capital to support high-risk innovation, and in particular when it comes to the final steps. We have good programs to supporting innovation until 2006. But when it comes to private investment into the companies to scale up, there we have a lack of resources in Europe. And basically, the EIC Accelerator was designed as a tool to specifically support companies in this critical phase. So, what's then the target for the EIC Accelerator? It targets companies or researchers aiming to incorporate a startup, and this company need to have a very high impact innovative product, service or business model that can create new markets or disrupt existing ones, both in Europe and worldwide. So it's not that since it's a European funding, you are supposed to do market business in Europe. You can do it wherever you want. You have to be timely in the market. You need to have necessary IP protection measures in place. You need to have a convincing commercialization strategy and the right partners in place. You need to have a very high level of financial risk, but you need to have investors also ready and looking for risk-sharing approaches. So people saying, yes, but if you are able to achieve these technical milestones, then we are able to release, 1, 2, 3 extra million euros for you. And very important, it's often ignored, but it's very, very important that you need to have the right team to implement the scale-up phase. So you need to have, even if you are a researcher skilled enough, you need to bring experienced people on board. How does it work? As I told you, the EIC Accelerator is there to support companies in the critical phase when they need capital investment also, not just grant. And therefore, the EIC Accelerator is a blended finance instrument designed to fill the funding gap for until companies can be co-financed in the STU or by private investors. So you have two components. One is the investment component. There's this new established EIC fund, which enters the capital of the company with a ticket of up to maximum 15 million euros for a maximum of 25% of the value of the company. This is to allow the smooth running of the company, of its commercial activities, and even to co-finance the grant component, which is up to 2.5 million euros, funded 70%. You will also have the possibility to apply for a grant-only approach if you have enough cash flow, or grant-first strategies for slightly lower TRL applications, and therefore you can go for grant-first to first work on your project and then introduce the equity later. The submission process is new, and it's in 3 steps. Basically, you see them here on this slide. You have a pre-screening phase where you have to submit a 5-pager, a video pitch, and a pitch deck. If you are successful, you can submit a full proposal with a fixed cutoff dates. There are 2 foreseen cutoff dates for this year. Awaiting for confirmation because, of course, we don't have yet the the approval of the work programs, but this is our indicative time cut-off dates for proposal. You will then go for, if you are successful, to a face-to-face interview with business experts, hopefully in Brussels, because the timeline is after the summer for the first interviews. So hopefully we will be able to travel to Brussels again. Be careful to submit. It's not like before where you could submit whenever you wanted. If you fail twice at this stage, you get a 1 year. You will get a 1 year ban, very likely. Same for here. And the possible outcomes at the face-to-face interview are that you can be retained for funding. You can try again the interview. You can get a seal of excellence where there's no financial risk, and this will allow the EIC to put you in touch with private investors ready to take over in case the project is evaluated excellent, but without the enough financial risk to invest the taxpayers' money. And if you get rejected a second time, again, you get a 1 year ban. So it's not like before that you could try whenever, how much time you wanted. So before you start working on your proposal, and I encourage you to follow our newsletter, follow our channels, because the application for the pre-screening will be open basically from the first moment that the call will be adopted. So remember what the instrument is about. It's about very innovative process and products. It's about the maturity of the solution. It's about ambitious but realistic scale-up plans. It's about IP. And remember that blended finance is now the norm. Other approaches should be duly justified. Yes, so before just going into a very quick slide about cascading grants, just wanted to tell you in particular what we can do for you. We try to work quite substantially on your application. We review extensively the proposal, also from a commercialization perspective. So we try to be very hands-on with you and collaborate extensively in the preparation of the proposal. Of course, you can get all the legal and financial support that is always provided to Horizon applicants. Cascading grants, yes. There's an easy jargon name also for them. They are called financial support for third parties, to third parties. How they work? They are normally used into the ICT domain, but it's something that is very much used into ICT. Basically, you have a consortium of entities normally are entities promoting innovation they receive funding to partner together and to run some activities, but also to distribute into small projects between normally 50 to 200,000 euros. Basically, they have a reservoir of money, and they distribute it like you see here in a small cascade, in a small form. How do they work? Basically, the project in charge issues the open call on the selected priorities. You can find these open calls on a dedicated European Commission website. You then prepare and submit a very short application, 10 pages normally. You have a fast evaluation of the project, and the project is selected for funding. Here I put the link for you on this European Commission page. Of course, it's difficult to keep track of whatever happens here on this page, because you have to go there. So please be in contact with us, and we will also study these cascading grant opportunities among all your research needs. Yes, indeed, contact us. And this slide wasn't expecting it, sorry. Let's go. And yes, this is just thank you for your attention. We are there for supporting you. I've heard quite some questions coming in during the presentation. So yes, I will move to the chat. Here we have also our contact details, the general ones. On our website, you can also find our specific contact, contacts. So yeah, let's go to the chat. And yeah, Charles, I don't know if, yes.
I think it's 2 questions for you, rather.
Yeah. Okay. So the Jessica, can you give an example of a risk-sharing approach? Yes. Imagine that you have your innovation, you have your company already established, and you have already been discussing with some VCs because you have your innovation, but the VCs are saying, okay, oh, I'm not really confident in putting 10 million euros in your innovation because yes, you have quite some technical milestones to achieve in order to reach the market. So okay, you say, okay, fair enough, but you will need money. So you go and apply for the EIC, and within your application, basically you say, okay, we have this interest from private investors who are saying basically not the full 10, but they can put 5, 6, 7 million. So in case you have someone basically who's ready to give the additional equity. So if you are selected, you have basically the proof that your application is very sound from a technical perspective, from a financial perspective as well. That the commission agrees that they have a financial risk, but they are willing to invest, and they are willing to put some of their resources together with the private ones. This is a risk-sharing approach. Of course, if you wish, we can discuss more in details on your specific case. You also ask about the rationale for the 1-year ban. Yes, it's success rate for the last round of the EIC. It was the last round, the last application in Horizon 2020, I think it was 0.98%, so below 1%. This is because 4,000 applications were put in, and quite a good number of them were resubmission from past rounds, and in some cases, hopeless resubmissions. Proposals scoring very badly. So the point is that if you want to reduce this background noise in order to have a better evaluation process, because if you have 4,000 evaluations, you need to have to contract a very high number of experts. Contracting very high number of experts, you have to lower the quality of the experts you contract, and this is causing a lower quality of the evaluation process. There's Alfonso asking if you find consortia. We help finding consortia. Yes, we do. And of course, the postdoctoral fellowship and the EIC are single applicants applications. But yes, for the consortium-based applications, we can help you finding the people who are normally very successful. So we try to identify who's been successful in the past and is likely to apply. But also, yes. We can also proactively seek for people that you may find interesting. Yes, Alvaro is asking, grant only is a bit discouraged. Yes, indeed, you can apply for grant only plus equity at a later stage. This is doable. It's normally, it will be somehow encouraged for applications that are not yet fully TRL6. So if you're not fully TRL6, you can't go for grant only and then ask for the equity in a later stage. But yes, indeed, the blended finance is now the norm. You can also go for grant only in case you have substantial cash flow. Imagine you are not a startup, but an SME, which already has many products to the market. You have enough cash flow, and you can live with that. I hope that the reply is clear, and in case, of course, feel free to contact me and we can discuss it further. Okay, great. Cheers. Any other question? If not, thank you very much for participating. Thanks, Charles, for he organized most of the. Yes, Robert. This is a requirement of public funding in Luxembourg, of funding for RBI project in Luxembourg. This is not. I think it's not a request for. I'm not an expert in national funding schemes. Charles, you can come in if you have more details on that. I think it's a European requirement that it's European requirement on state aids. That you are not considered from a series of parameters an enterprise in difficulty from a financial perspective. And unfortunately for startups, not being in undertaking in difficulty means that you need to have financing already in your bank account. Am I correct, Charles?
I think that's pretty much it. I'm neither an expert, but I would say, as a general rule, the criteria for European projects are generally more relaxed than the ones for national projects because of these state aid regulation from the European Commission that tries to make sure that no country is disproportionately helping their companies or attracting companies in an unfair way. And that's why European projects that are by definition open to everybody are not affected by this.
Yeah. Exactly. So, thanks again to everyone else, to everyone participating, and thanks for Charles for organizing it. Because yes, Robert, I think it's something that is easy to discuss separately, also with people from the national funding, because they will have the answer for you on this. And yes, and I look forward to working with you on your applications, and please be in touch. And yes, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.